What's up, everybody? We are now actually live, and of course, just to let you know, Bruce actually has been blocked because he decided to go ahead and try to promote another hangout and say some very obnoxious things. So we're starting out on a good foot, I think. We have Brandon, or Deck Crash, with me to my left, and Michael to our right, Rational Roundtable. Y'all folks doing well today?
Yeah, right.
I think I will live.
I know Rational Roundtable's not feeling that good today, but we're going to start off with a great topic. That is to say, women preaching or being allowed to preach in biblical circumstance. And I think I'm going to let Michael start us off on that.
Well, personally, I don't have a problem with female preachers, pastors, etc. Unless you are a person that wants to be a Pauline fundamentalist. Well, actually, and it's not even that. It's if your church does not allow female leadership
God in all sorts of places
because of the what am I thinking of? Because of the doctrines of Paul, then your church should also not allow women to speak at all, because Paul takes it that far, that women should not be allowed to speak in church, and that they should only be able to consult their husbands at home after church is over, if they have a question. I think in the modern context that those types of regulations are unwarranted and unnecessary, but I think that if you can't pick and choose which rules of Paul you want to follow.
Well, from what I know, and even in the Catholic Church, and even in my church, that's not the reason why women aren't preachers. The reason simply being is a matter of spiritual authority, and that throughout Scripture we find that God has put the responsibility of spiritual authority on the male, and that has nothing to do with Paul. That was Paul's writings to the various churches in Asia Minor are over matters that were unique to those churches.
Right.
But throughout Scripture, outside of Paul's letters, you still see references to spiritual authority being on the head of the man. As a matter of fact, one of the judges of Israel was a woman. That was only a one-time thing, and only because God couldn't find a man who was worthy of
But the thing is that if God allowed one female judge
of that mantle, so he had to give it to him. It had nothing to do with women being inferior or anything like that.
Oh, you kind of wigged out there for a second, Dex. But if God made an exception, okay, he couldn't find a dude that was worthy of being a judge, so he picked this chick.
Just like that.
Well, yeah, that's kind of how God puts it. And dudes are, of limited numbers, so did I pick a chick. But if that's the case, if God was willing to make this exception simply because of lacking in qualified guys, then why should we assume that women are prohibited from being teachers? I know there are a lot of mainstream churches that simply do not allow female pastors, and they almost always cite Paul if you ask them about that particular rule.
And in that, I think they make a fundamental mistake, because it's really not Paul you should be citing. As a matter of fact, whenever it was explained to me, no one ever used Paul to explain it. So that way I understood that there were reasons outside of just, outside of the epistles, why men usually aren't, why women aren't normally called to a position of spiritual authority. I mean, women do teaching in the home, even in ancient societies. You did have women do teaching of certain types in the home, but what we're saying is that just on a head governmental type thing, or even just in the kingdom of God, which would be a spiritual government. God has always put that authority on man.
Mm-hmm. But he has not expressly forbidden women from doing it.
No, He hasn't, not from what I've seen. But
Right.
I think what you have to go by what it simply implies is that God intended for guys to be the leaders in that regard. And
Right. I could
it's
see
not a
that.
sexist thing or anything.
I would say that. I mean, it's similar to like, for example, there are certain lines of work where men tend to dominate, right? One of them being construction. Now, does that mean women should not be allowed to be in construction? Not at all. It's just that, based on the nature of the job, most of the people that will be interested in it are indeed male. I think that pastor, similarly, is a job that appeals more to men than women.
Well, yeah, a pastor has to be pretty much what a father has to be for his family.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, is that it's a job that primarily appeals to men, but that women should be allowed to participate if they so choose and they're qualified to do it. Excuse me. I see Brian J's in the chat. You should get him on the show.
Well, I don't know, because, messengers is so awesome that I don't know that he'd want to join our, 20-plus people here. But so let me ask you, Michael. I'm not getting it clear from you, because I think it's clear when it comes from Brandon. So, do you think it's not biblical for a woman to preach, or do you think it is perfectly biblical?
I think it's perfectly biblical for a woman to be a church leader of any capacity. I don't see anywhere in the Bible, other than Paul himself when dealing with a specific circumstance, that says anything to the effect of women shall not serve.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't expressly forbid women from that. Like I said, I just simply think that it was more of an understood thing about spiritual authority, and also, like I said, though Scripture doesn't outrightly say only have men in positions of leadership. It's simply that particular thing about men being in positions of leadership is more implied in Scripture than really outrightly ordered. However, if you're thinking of like how there are people who want to, like the Roman Catholic Church, to ordain women as preachers, that's most likely not going to happen. The Catholic Church is very highly traditionalist. And Puppy Turtle just told me he's trying to get in on the Google chat. I think he's having trouble.
Okay, I gave him the link. I'm not sure why he wouldn't be able to access it. But we also have Jade welcome us. Jade, welcome.
Hello there. I'm wandering around looking for an avatar. And
Well, don't you have like
but I'm here.
75 of those things like preloaded and ready to go?
Well, what's really funny about that is that I do, but I don't. I'm moving them all to an avatar. Yeah, I use whichever one I'm in the mood for. I'm moving them all to an avatar file, and I don't have them all in there yet. And oddly enough, I don't have my regular one in there, which I need to fix. So here it is. And this one.
So, Jade, talk to us. What do you think about women preaching in church?
Oh, I'm all for it. I'm all for women priests, too.
Do you think that
And I do think that will be overturned.
Do you think it's biblical, though?
Yes, actually, I do. I mean, you look at the examples of Mary and of Mary Magdalene, who wasn't the prostitute, by the way. I think there are 3 different Marys that get conflated into Mary Magdalene. I forget. Apologies for not remembering that. But if you remember, it was the 2 Marys who saw Jesus when he left the tomb. If you remember, it was the 2 Marys who were really his first disciples. I actually made a fun argument to a friend of mine once that since it was the 2 Marys, his mother Mary, and who was his very first disciple, that then the hierarchy of the church really should be women, and just the regular priests should be men.
Hey, real quick, I want to say that I forgot to mention that yes, the first people post-resurrection to encounter Christ were in fact women, and I think that's a valid point. And Christ commonly went to women in his ministry, and if Jesus can communicate directly with women, why can't he do it today? But I need to
Yes.
step away for just a minute. I'll be back in just a few minutes.
Right, right. And there is a quote. Now, unfortunately, I don't have it memorized. I'm very bad at memorizing things like that. But there is a quote where Jesus refers to his mother and I think Mary Magdalene as being like the first of his, amongst his disciples. And as I said, I argued since they were really above the apostles that in the Catholic Church all the hierarchy should be women. That was a fun argument, not a serious one.
Well, how would I put this? I think that the reason why Jesus chose men as his inner circle, the 12, was simply he also did things according to the context of the culture in which he lived.
Yes, I would agree.
In Judea, women were not exactly the most highly respected of people. As a matter of fact, their witness was considered so unreliable that they couldn't testify in any kind of court. Though this and this of course in the end works to the gospel's advantage because of the testimony of women to say that Jesus was alive, and the gospel show the testimony being first given by Mary, and so I think it was Mary and Martha went up to the tomb, but but what I'm saying, and just in general, I'm sorry I digress. It's just, okay, like I said, Scripture doesn't expressly forbid women from teaching people. It's not from what I know. I mean, heck, our Sunday school teachers back in my old church were mostly women, but as far as preachers went, it was mostly men. Well, they did have women who were ministers.
Well,
pastors. I mean, as far as pastoring, it was all men, but they had women who were ministers.
I think two men, but that if a woman has a calling to do it, then by all means she should do it. And that's the key.
Okay, your sound is cutting out and cutting back on, Michael.
Really weird. I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. What I was going to say is that one of the core things about being a pastor, minister, or whatever your church calls it, is the idea that you are called to do it. And I think that sex is irrelevant to whether or not you are called to do it. If
you cut out again. You cut out again.
Is up today. I said if you're called to do it, you're called to do it, and that's what you should do.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can anybody else hear me okay?
Can now.
But
you just cut out.
I would really like Roman Missile Exegete to come in here to talk about it, because he at least will be able to tell it from a Catholic perspective, because they're very adamant about not having women as priests or any kind of ministers.
Well, I would hazard.
Well, that's not exactly true. Women are participating in the church. In many cases, women give, because I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic schools through high school, and women are actually basically taking the role of deacons now. I mean, you'll have to. I'm not exactly sure what's going on now, but things were far more liberal in my day, and even maybe the hierarchy, the old men in charge of the church, maybe against having women as priests, but there have been a number of theological arguments in favor of it, and most of the laity is apocryphal. But I would like to point out that I grew up in very conservative Orange County, and most of the laity that I knew was in favor of women priests. That's in a real conservative part of the country. So I don't think that it's inconceivable, and women have been moving into more roles in the Catholic Church. As for where they are right now, you'd have to ask Jacob. But the church has been more inclusive of women in more roles, and I think that's pretty much the way it's going to go. It's not going to be anything sudden. And I think you'll find, as I said, women as deacons in other roles like that.
Just as a point of interest, the Anglican Church has had women in the clergy for a good few decades now.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, aren't you just special?
I was
Just as a point of interest, that was all, Michael.
I was thinking of something snarky to say, but Michael beat me to it.
Well,
That's what he's good
You
at.
know, you have indoor toilets. We have female clergy. It's the way the world works.
Okay. Yeah, we. I would say that while I think it's difficult to make a biblical case for an outright ban of female clergy, the Catholic Church when I talked to Jacob about this kind of stuff before, he usually falls back on the church tradition card, because the Catholics believe that the tradition of the church is equivalent to whether or not you can find it in the Bible. If the church if this is something that multiple popes have been endorsing and that they have been doing for centuries, then that's as good as being the Word of God.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why I'm no longer Catholic.
That's a problem I have with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and that is true, that it is tradition. There is no law in the Catholic Church that, to my knowledge, that says women can't be priests. It is tradition, and the old men running the church, as, by the way, we used to say that when I was in Catholic school, the old men running the church are reluctant to give up power and reluctant to change tradition one little iota.
Well, I'd say almost everybody.
Didn't the Pope make an ex cathedra statement about women never being priests?
No, not to my knowledge.
Yeah,
Very few
I've
ex
never heard
cathedra statements have ever been made, and I forget the last one had to do with had to do something with Mary, but it was a very traditional sort of thing. I mean, it wasn't anything out there. Ex cathedral statements.
Okay. I remember talking about
the problem I have with the appeal to tradition is that, it's long before I was born, of course, but in this country it was traditional to throw your village idiot in the stocks regularly. So yeah,
allowed to make videos.
Nowadays, nowadays it's mandatory they make videos on YouTube.
Bruce?
There's a difference. There's a difference in what you're calling tradition too, and in some ways I like tradition. A lot of people like tradition. The traditional garments, for instance, the priest wear. Okay, fine, that doesn't impact anybody. Tradition disallowing women to be priests, that does impact other people. So you have to look at the traditions and what value do they have and how do they affect other people as to whether you want to keep them or not.
Right. And that's kind of where I have a problem with the Catholic Church, is that I don't have a problem if you say church tradition and this is how we do a ceremony, this is
right.
The type of prayers we like to use, crap like that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But when you start mandating that women shall not be a part of it just because it's church tradition.
Yeah, that's just puerile.
Yeah, I agree completely.
And and Jacob knows I feel this way. I mean, it's obviously nothing personal on him, because even though he is a Catholic and even though he's a Catholic and therefore a cult member.
Oh man, don't talk about Jacob behind his back.
Oh no, he says this to his face, so there's nothing behind the dude's back.
Yeah, it's not like something he He said words to Jacob's face, believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say one. And
Oh, you cut out again.
Did
you have more to say? Oh,
no,
you're done?
No, go ahead. That's all right.
So I don't know. I grew up Pentecostal, and I went through the church like from a young age to like about 25, I guess, when I left the church. I saw a huge change, because when I started, like when I was a kid, women couldn't do anything. My mom wouldn't let me wear pants to church. Makeup, even nylons, like wearing like stockings was considered kind of like over the edge a little bit, and like nail polish, things like that. Like it was really weird. It was almost like a United Pentecostal, like the UPC type stuff going on. But so it was really, it was pretty misogynistic when I was a kid. And I remember, I think I was maybe like 12 years old, and the youth group was actually one of the more progressive elements of the church. And I remember our youth pastor saying, we're going to have a youth service, which we did every, like a couple times a year. He would do the sermon, and the youth would run the service and do the music and all that stuff. And I remember around that age where he asked us girls if we wanted to be ushers, if we wanted to pass the the donation plates around during the service, and that was kind of like a big whoa, girls doing that? I don't know. Looking back, it seems really silly, but yeah, they did that, and that was kind of like a big breaking, like, wow, this is a huge change for the church, and that was kind of where I saw things turn around. And as it is now, my aunt is actually an ordained minister in the Pentecostal church. So things have turned around a lot, like in the 20, 30 years, since I was a kid.
I'm actually part of UPC.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I'm familiar with some of the things, though. I didn't realize just how liberal, I shouldn't say how liberal, but how they loosened up, from that, because I didn't know that.
Well, we weren't United Pentecostal, we were just regular Pentecostal, but I have family that is United Pentecostal, and
I am United Pentecostal. So.
Yeah, my cousins, I still have cousins that don't let their hair down, don't wear makeup, like, I still have cousins like that.
How would you compare United Pentecostal to, say, Assemblies of God? Because I attended Assemblies of God for a while.
Assemblies of God first of all, Assemblies of God are Trinitarian. United Pentecostal is not.
But as far as general attitude, are they similar?
They also don't have any compunctions against wearing makeup or pants or anything like that.
Yeah. It was interesting too, because I started wearing pants to church. I just said, I'm not wearing a dress anymore, Mom. I hate them. I'm not doing it. And I started wearing pants because it was pretty much the only way she could get me out of the house Sunday morning. And then it started to catch on. Other women started wearing them too. I don't know if I was the first, but I mean, it happened while I was there.
Well, it's like in the Pentecostal church, though I have seen it loosen up. This is the one that I go to now. When I was younger, guys did not wear beards or mustaches. They all went clean shaven. I don't know. To this day, even my old pastor was never able to explain it to me in a very satisfactory way. God rest his soul. But he.
You could always find scripture that says the opposite, that men should not shave.
And from what I learned about that, that was actually more of a backlash against the hippie counterculture of the 70s, which is kind of stuck for the time. So,
but I always found that funny when you would have some of these ultra-conservative...
No, you cut out again. Oh,
yeah, I see that. It's Google Plus is muting my microphone.
You're not holding any buttons on your keyboard or anything, are you?
I was, but...
Don't do that.
That's what does it.
Oh, okay. I did not know.
If you hold a key, it'll mute you, yeah.
Yeah, that's what does it.
Anyway, I apologize. What was I saying?
I don't know. The hippie thing?
The ultra-conservative churches, they have this unwritten dress code of men being perfectly clean-shaven, wearing shirt and tie, that kind of thing, and yet they'll cite laws in Leviticus and stuff left and right when it suits their needs, when Leviticus is where it says you should not shave.
Well, no, whenever I asked, that had nothing to do with, he didn't give me anything out of Leviticus at all. He was talking about how the codes of appearance in the Roman Empire were, and several other things that I don't remember clearly, but when I thought about it, it just really didn't make any sense. Don't get me wrong, I loved my pastor. That man was one of the most wonderful people you could ever know, and the whole church was heartbroken when he died. But he just didn't give me a good explanation on that.
But something you said there rings true to me too, because as a young girl, I knew that there were some scriptures and things that said these, like women don't do this and blah, blah, blah. I don't know what they even were anymore, because to me, the thing was, it just didn't make sense. I just couldn't wrap my head around the fact that just because I was a female...
You kind of cut out.
Gotta love Google Hangout.
was treated differently, and it's not holding any keys. No, I mean, it just never made sense to me, and I can't, like, it doesn't matter what the scriptures say, because how can it make sense? Like, I just don't get it. And I never could, and that was one of the things that I could never wrap my head around.
Well, I know that they have, like, okay, for, like, women, the dress codes they have for women, because the reason why they talk about women, they have women wear dresses, is because, and they get this out of Paul's doctrine about it being a shame for a man to wear a pertaining unto a woman, and for a woman to wear a pertaining unto a man. They don't wear makeup because they say that in the Bible, everywhere you see makeup listed, it seems to be associated with prostitution. They let their hair grow long because the Bible talking about a woman has a long. Once again, out of Paul's Gospels, if a woman has long hair, it is a glory, and therefore it's as a covering. And the problem is they tend to cherry pick what Paul says, because he says a lot of things that they don't do, and that's one of the things about wearing veils and all kinds of things, you know.
Yeah. Well, what would Paul have said about wearing Nike sneakers had that been? Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's so out of date that it doesn't even matter to me anymore. I don't care what Paul said about culture at the time. It doesn't matter to me. You know? I can't care. I try, I can't.
Well, like I said, those are like to me, those are like misinterpretations of what Paul intended when he said what he said, because the whole deal of because each of his letters also were messages to the church, and they covered various situations that were unique to those churches.
Yeah, exactly. Because he doesn't cover, cross-dressing and hermaphrodites or transsexuals or any of these other things. I mean, what is that guy supposed to wear to church?
Well, it does. He does say, like I said, it's a shame for a man to wear a pertaining unto a woman, and for a woman to wear a pertaining unto a man. But
there are times when, how do we define a man or a woman even? Like, we can't even always do it. So.
Well, not only that. What about kilts?
Yeah.
Well, kilts actually are Satanists. They're Satanists. Kilts are.
James is only saying
there
that
you go.
because he knows that I wear a kilt from.
Oh, dude, he got married in a kilt. It's the funniest picture I've ever seen.
Nice.
I like men in kilts. I think they look great in kilts.
Remember, the kilt was easy to wear. When we went out in the battle, we wore full guns of sequences. The object was to blind your opponent.
There is actually talking about what's appropriate for the age. There is also, of course, the fact that male or female, if you look back at the style of dress that there was, well, at least traditionally depicted in the area at the time, most people are kind of wearing robes that are fairly homogeneous anyway.
Yeah.
Actually, in that day and age, men wore their robes a particular way, and women wore their robes a particular way.
Yeah, but the point being, if the only difference between a male's clothing and a female's clothing is the way they've actually put the robe together, it's the same. Do you see what I'm getting at?
It's the same with shirts.
What I'm getting at is you're talking about a nuance at best.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, and as I said, it's the same with like shirts and blouses. Women's buttons go one way, men's buttons go another. So under those circumstances, would a woman be wrong if she was wearing a man's shirt? I mean, yeah, it's nuance. Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
That's kind of the point. It's nuances.
Yeah.
It's trifling nuances.
And since today it is acceptable for women to wear a much wider range of clothing, could that those biblical verses be interpreted to allow women to wear pants today?
Well, if you look at women's pants, even those have zippers in different places to the guys.
But a women's pants actually are cut different than men's pants. because
women have their thighs and all that are shaped like.
Right.
yeah,
But there
it
are
depends what you
some-
wear.
Yeah, but there are
I like to
some
wear men's
clothes-
cargo pants personally.
Yeah, and I've often worn men's shirts because I have really wide shoulders and really long arms for my height. Women's blouses, come several inches before my wrist.
I have a
couple
big
inches.
problem with this, and I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I
Women's
really take issue with this. It's that why is it that when a woman takes a man's shirt and puts it on, it's sexy, but if a man does it, he's either a transvestite or just silly.
Well, and see, I don't consider it transvestite or silly. I don't care.
I don't either.
It doesn't.
No, but I mean,
doesn't affect me
I'm
that
not
way.
saying-
You're
I'm
right.
not arguing.
I know.
It's not
Right.
fair that what I'm saying is like it's a fact that a woman
It
wearing
is.
men's clothing is
Yeah.
sexy, and a man wearing women's clothing looks ridiculous.
But here's
Well,
why. I bet you
some men
that
don't.
comes from that probably comes from the males though. It's the men that are making that judgment, not the women.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a
'cause
double.
I
It's a
would-
double standard. It's the same
Yeah.
with. It's the same thing as like for how white people, if they call a black person the N word, they may as well want to call an ambulance. But
Yeah.
but if a black guy
Yeah.
calls a black guy the N word, no one even blinks.
Yeah, and
cultural.
to speak further to that, without going into too much detail, there have been women in my life that have actually asked me whether I would wear their clothes. So explain that one.
Actually,
Yeah.
it's ironic that we're talking about this. Just yesterday, I helped a guy find a pink shirt at Target because
Hey,
he
it
needed.
takes a
There's
real
nothing
man
wrong
to-
with a pink shirt.
Yeah, it takes a
Exactly.
real man
Well,
to
no,
wear-
he's
Let
actually.
me say,
It was a breast
Yeah.
cancer thing that he
Right.
needed a pink shirt for, but he couldn't find one to
Right.
help him, like to fit him. So I helped him, and I think that's
Yeah.
cool.
but
Yeah.
let's not forget that when I was growing up, that would have gotten a guy beaten to a pulp.
Yeah,
Wearing a pink
no, it's
shirt.
true.
Yeah, but you
And I
see,
would-
you know,
but also-
I've got a
Brian, can I finish,
sorry.
please?
yeah.
That's okay. I just wanted to say, if you think men look awful in women's clothes, I would like to add Eddie Izzard.
Oh yeah.
He
Okay,
does
Brian.
look
Good
good.
Go for it.
example.
Well, we can move to the next
Got what I
topic.
was going to say now.
Ugh.
No,
Eddie
sorry.
Izzard. Eddie Izzard was
Izzard.
kind of the example. Yeah, well, Izzard,
Whatever.
however you pronounce it. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of fairly exemplary. I mean, that man wears women's clothes as though they were made for him.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, but
actually,
he doesn't look good in them.
I think he looks good.
He's not a
I-
good-looking, woman.
I actually like that. I actually like that the guys are wearing like the emo, like the what is it, the man eyeliner? What do they call that? Guy liner.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know, I
guy
actually
I've never heard
like
of
that just
eyeliner before.
I like it just because it seems to like break some boundaries, and
Well, that's nothing new, though. I mean, the Wavos were doing that back in the 80s.
well, I know. I'm just saying it's becoming kind of more acceptable to do it like on a daily basis. Like I've seen guys wear it, and I think that's cool.
I'm sorry, what are they wearing? I completely
Guy
phased
liner.
out.
It's eyeliner.
Yeah.
Eyeliner, but men wear it.
Nowhere,
Why
in,
should guys look good?
there's not a guy in my state that's doing that yet. So
No?
I have
Oh,
no
well.
idea.
Well, that's because where you live.
Yeah, I'm in the deep south, but I'm
I
just saying
live
there's not a guy.
I live in the Texas of Canada, and I've seen it, so it's kind
There
of.
is no Texas in Canada. That's a myth.
It's as close
Oh.
as you can get.
Alberta's pretty
Damn it.
close.
Close.
Yeah.
So, do you guys want to continue here, or shall we move on to Jesus Superman?
We can move. I don't care.
Yeah, we can move on.
Well, I mean, just for those who don't know, the most recent movie, which I have not seen, but it's Superman. It's called Man of Steel. Is that right?
Yes, Man of Steel.
Man of Steel has a lot of depictions of Superman being Jesus Christ, and in fact, that's part of the actual. I was reading earlier. That's a part of the actual tactic of the company. They're promoting this to preachers, so they'll actually put it out there to their actual congregations. I actually
Support
haven't.
the movie.
Yeah, I actually have an issue specifically with this when it comes to the movie. Almost, and it's my understanding, Michael can correct me, almost implying that Superman is like Christ, and that I have an issue with.
It's here's the thing. There's a lot of it in this film. From the very beginning of the film, and if you look at the analogy or the allegory of if Superman is Jesus, then Jor-El, Superman's biological father, is God. And at the beginning of the film, the first thing Jor-El does is give Kal-El, his son, free will. And by extension, giving that free will to all of humanity. Superman is also the first, quote-unquote, natural birth in centuries, which is kind of a reversal of the Immaculate Conception concept.
I'm sorry, man. I just don't see that kind of parallel because, first of all, the humans already had free will. The Kryptonians that he was trying to introduce the concept of free will to when he chose to have when he chose to have a natural birth. So I don't see what kind of parallels being run here.
Well, it's not that they're.
You cut out again.
You cut out.
Yeah, I know. It's not that they're. Why is it still?
Michael, you're fine, dude. Talk.
There. I don't know why I wouldn't unmute. It's not that they were paralleling a specific verse or concept from the Bible, and that just the idea that free will comes from the Father, and that He had the ability to bestow it upon His Son. But as it moves on, as the film moves on, you have a lot of things that happen in Jesus' life. When he turns 33 years old, he is baptized in a scene where he is thrown off of an oil derrick into the water and makes the crucifix symbol while floating in the water.
Oh my dude! Now you're just stretching it. I'm sorry.
He's 33 years old, immersed in water.
That I don't think that was supposed to even be anything.
No.
I would guarantee you he is.
Hold on, guys. We can't all talk at once. And that was, hold on, Bossman, hold on. That was actually something that they were promoting. That was something that I actually read about, that they were actually promoting to the different priests and preachers and such as that. That was one of the symbolic things they were doing.
Yeah.
That was way too subtle.
I'm not saying it was
all Turtle finally got on.
This is the best Jesus story movie I've seen since Gran Torino. And I think that a lot of people laugh at that, but, Gran Torino is a wonderful Jesus parallel story. And if you, what's the name of that? Word on Fire Video, the Catholic channel, he did a wonderful analysis of Gran Torino and how it was a Jesus parallel. This movie does it much more so. And yes, most of the scenes that are not overt. It's not like they say, "Hey, Superman, you're the savior of humanity, and you come down from space to save us." That would be stupid. But for example, one of my favorite, and I think from a cinematic perspective, this was absolutely beautiful combination of what was really going on in the world of the movie and adding some symbology to the picture, was a shot of Superman talking to a Catholic priest in a church, asking him about whether or not he should turn himself into the authorities so that he could then be handed over to General Zod and most likely executed. While he was saying this, you saw him sitting in a pew, sun shining on his face. Behind him, you see a stained glass figure of Jesus praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was making that same prayer. He was just doing it in a slightly different way. This type of allegorical thing happens all through the film, up until the big battle, of course, which is more or less just let's get two superhero and a few supervillains duking it out, which was just fun.
I'm going to use the word...
Go ahead, Puppy Turtle. Yeah, and that chance to speak.
Firstly, it didn't like the fact that I hadn't used my real name. I thought that they'd stopped not liking that. Apparently, they still don't like that. Secondly, I'm going to use the word Aslan briefly, though, just to use it. And thirdly, Rational Roundtable, we'll get back on topic immediately after this. You should leave. You should cease to be a free Christian objectivist and become a rational truthist, because that's the movement I'm planning to found soon.
Puppy Turtle, but what do you have to say about what Michael said?
Okay, I missed most of it because I got in. The lag between the YouTube version and the version that's actually happening is so big, I missed most of it. So.
Okay, may I say something?
Yes.
Bossman.
Okay. Well, I think again, I've not seen the latest Superman. I am going to see it soon, but it's if you look at, for example, The Dark Knight Rises, there are very heavy religious metaphors there. Now, again, I don't want to speak for Christopher Nolan himself, but if you look at, for example, The Dark Knight Rises, there are very heavy metaphors, comparisons to the sacrifice of Christ, blah, blah, blah. He's the only person who can do it, he's the only person who will be able to do it, and he's going to save a load of people, put his own saves the line, but do the great sacrificial acts by doing it. I mean, I think Dark Knight Rises is probably closer to that. Now, again, I don't want to talk about but again, Zack Snyder is not Christopher Nolan with the best will in the world.
Well, I think that's a good thing. I don't think Christopher Nolan would be good to direct a Superman film, to be honest with you.
Well, he produced it, and actually he was the one who got the whole deal off the ground, no pun intended.
No, I'm not saying that. I understand that, but I think he would have been a poor choice of director, and I think he knows that because he easily could have taken this project if he wanted to.
No, I'm not saying it was a bad choice. Well, actually, I do think that. I mean, Zack Snyder's doesn't really do narrative very well.
But let me.
Film, Gary, have you seen Man of Steel yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, but let's bring it back on topic a little bit. So, when it comes to making Superman Jesus, you think that's all right? I mean, they're using enough allegory to say, hey, this guy is Jesus.
Well, that's the idea behind it. Because if you look at, for example, where the idea of Superman comes from, it comes from the idea of the Jewish Messiah. Basically, it is a Jewish version of Jesus. I know Jesus was Jewish, but like, for example, it's basically the Moses story done in a bit of a different way. You look at the fact that the two people were Jews. The Christ metaphor has come about later in his lives. But you look about it, I mean, it's always been there.
Yeah, the Christ
metaphor.
Yeah,
I agree. That is an interesting point, Gary. But over the generations, there are many, many, many stories that have been inspired by biblical stories.
Right.
But I think when you get something like Superman that's kind of built up its own mythos in the time that it's been around, I think to try and wind it back to its original sources, given the emotional investment of much of the audience, I think that is possibly dicing with if not the directly inappropriate, the potentially inappropriate. I think Hollywood needs to be a little bit careful when it comes to things like that.
But I'll take this back though. That I'm a huge comic book fan, and I've seen the growth of Superman and what he's become. Now you got to remember that when he first started, back in the, I think it was like the 30s, he wasn't what we have now. The character has progressed.
I agree.
I see what it is now. It is the idea that what Superman is the best part of us without the failings. Or if he has feelings, he manages to overcome them. And that's the ideas that are behind Superman. And it's similar to, and I think this is where Mike is right, that to Jesus, because you look at Jesus and what he did at the time he was around, he was overcoming the iniquities of his time, but was speaking towards a greater future ahead where people would know about that.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just, I don't know.
Let's go to Deck Crash. Hold on, Bossman. Deck Crash wants to say something, I think.
I was just going to say is that I don't have any problems with movies that do like Christ mythos comparisons or allegories. I think that's actually pretty cool. I'm just saying is that I really think that if if the creators of Superman, excuse me, of the Dark, sorry, now y'all got me talking about Batman, Man of Steel, we're trying to uh, we're trying to make a Christ mythos comparison. I think that they were being way too subtle because it went completely over my head. And even
Well,
the
that's just because
even
you're
though
Superman.
the things that Michael was talking about to me don't really come off. Well, they come off. I guess you could interpret it if you think about it that way as a Christ comparison. But really, it was just way too subtle to be something that everybody is going to pick up on. I mean, to me, I didn't really see it. The whole deal with Superman, anyway, it's subtle enough to know that, well, Superman, I guess, yeah, is kind of space Jesus, like some people say.
Well, have you ever read All Star Superman?
No, I have not. I don't
Okay.
really read that many DC comics.
Yeah, Jade wanted to go too. Let's let Jade go.
Yeah.
real quick.
Okay, I just wanted to say that it's sort of echoing somewhat what Gary is saying. I have read Superman comics since about 1955. So I'm familiar with the, shall we say, evolution of Superman. Now, Superman as a Christ figure is nothing new. It was talked about back in the 1960s that I remember, articles and things. And I don't have any problem with the, using Superman as an allegory for Christ. I can see that. There are lots of allegorical characters. Puppy Turtle brought up Aslan, and everybody, well, maybe not everybody, but a lot of people love C.S. Lewis. And yeah, but where I have a problem is the marketing. When you're marketing Christ, essentially.
Well, except I'll give this though to the producers of Man of Steel. They're not marketing it as a Jesus film.
They are, Michael.
Well, no, I mean, as far as their public ad campaign and stuff, it would not be obvious that they're making an allegory film about Jesus, and they don't overtly say it anywhere in the film, like Brandon was saying. It is all relatively subtle. It's just like, I mean, if you look at The Matrix, right? The Matrix is a film that has a lot of postmodern philosophy in it, and also a lot of biblical references in it.
Michael?
And that's not how they marketed the film. They marketed it as an action film.
Is Man of Steel all about Jesus? Warner Brothers hopes Christians think so.
Well, Warner
Man of
Brothers
Steel-
hope Christians think so, yes.
Man of Steel draws strong parallels between Superman and Christ. I mean,
But
that's
that's
all
not
they're
how-
talking about.
Well, Losoyo, that's not how they advertised it. That's what Michael's trying to say.
Right. If you look at the trailers and the commercials for Man of Steel, you do not see trailers and commercials for Super Jesus, the movie. You see, Clark Kent, a.k.a. Superman, fighting bad guys,
Right.
doing the superhero thing.
They're doing it via print specifically towards churches and Christians. They're not putting it on advertisements, I'll give you that, but they're doing specific prints that are going out to direct churches.
Okay,
Well, I
cool.
think that's a smart thing to do.
Okay.
Well, geez, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because a lot of people have problems with accepting the ideas that go behind Jesus because of the history that comes behind it. Now, if it's put in a more palatable way through Superman, who is an icon, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, like you look at Superman, he is well known. I mean, even in the UK, where I mean, even though he's seen as an American superhero, we love Superman here just as much as anybody else. I don't.
Right, everybody knows who Superman is.
Like that doesn't like Superman.
Okay,
So
so now there's a minute. There's a word I can get it in edgewise. Okay. Firstly, as someone who's not seen the movie, I can safely say that I didn't know that this was an issue. So obviously, I didn't get it from probably seeing the same trailer or perhaps a couple different ones a couple times. I was hoping that I think you were supposed to think it's going to be as good as the Dark Knight trilogy because it has the little name on it, even though it's in the same place. But that's the thing I got from it. I was also hoping it would be. I was hoping it would be good, but I I never got that. Secondly, reading Superman comics, I could go over there and get my one comic book, because I have one. And then thirdly, about the Christian parallel thing, if there really is, if they really are comparing it to Christianity, this may be more to do with how C.S. Lewis did it, but I know that there are, like, if you read on Wikipedia, there are people who are legitimately upset, like butthurt, about the fact that Chronicles of Narnia is about Christianity, because they didn't realize that. And because all these people, they are extremely bothered by this for whatever reason. Like, there's a guy, an author, who intentionally wrote the secular version of the Chronicles of Narnia. I don't know if it's because he himself was an anti-Christian bigot and couldn't stand the fact that Christianity was being referenced by something popular. That might be the case. I don't know for a fact that it is. The movie Golden Compass was based off of one of these novels. I think. I don't know what the novels themselves are called. Someone else might. They're more popular.
That's it. It is called Golden Compass, the first one.
Oh yeah, Golden Compass.
Oh yeah, the one where the kids go to kill God.
His Dark Materials.
Right.
His Dark Materials.
But and I would say
that's the first one.
Responding to what James was saying about their marketing to churches directly, there was a movie, and I'm sorry I can't remember. I think it was called Man on the Ledge. It had an atheist protagonist, and the movie itself was a movie about a fundamentalist Christian couple and an atheist that lived near them, and the atheist was the rational, reasonable guy, and the fundamentalists were kind of nuts. And I guess the dude was going to kill somebody or something, and told the atheist to go jump off a ledge unless he would kill somebody or something like that. And I don't know how the movie did at the box office. Didn't really appeal to me, but I know that the producers of that film, while the trailers of the film do not advertise this as any kind of anti-Christian film, they don't advertise it as being a film that makes any kind of religious statement at all. They also sent information to atheist groups all around the country saying, hey, we got a movie for you. And so this is nothing new. It's just if you know that there is a particular segment that your movie is going to address in some subtle way, then you want them in on it. Because the last thing you want is for Christians in droves to be protesting Man of Steel because, oh, look what they've done to my religion. They've turned Jesus into a superhero. And so instead they proactively go to the churches and say, hey, look at this beautiful allegory we built that you can use to teach Bible lessons with Superman.
Yeah, I guess that's true enough.
I really enjoyed that movie. I think it was just called The Ledge. And I thought it was really good, actually. I enjoyed it, and I think it was just refreshing because, let's face it, almost all movies have some Christian references in them, so it was kind of nice to have something different for a change. I mean, not that there weren't Christian references, but no, I just thought it was nice because it was a different movie.
Yeah, hold on, Puppy, you don't have to be a jerk, first off. That's the second time you've jumped in front of somebody and you cursed, which you yourself hate. Now, if you want to respond to it, go ahead, but don't be a jerk.
Well, just let me clarify.
Not her. Okay. What I was calling that was. Did you just accuse Hollywood of being like pro-Christian?
No, not at all. Let me clarify what I'm saying. I can't quite hear you. No, let me clarify. What I mean is, usually when religion is present in a movie, it's Christian. Like, we don't really, unless it's like I don't know, sometimes you watch overseas movies that focus on other religions and stuff. I just thought it was nice to have a movie from the other side. That's all.
I will grant you that most religious references, actually, if you look at film overall, the predominant religion in film is Catholicism specifically.
Yeah.
But the thing is that at the time, and I think why Puppy Turtle got all riled up there for a second, is because generally speaking, religious people are played as nuts.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's very rare to have outside of an exorcism film, it's very rare to have anybody in the church not be corrupt, a pedophile, a secret serial killer, something to that effect.
Absolutely.
Well, in the movie Prometheus, the main character was religious, and she actually was pretty even-handed.
And I actually liked the way they dealt with it in Prometheus. I didn't have a problem. But that's another. This is all about a Genesis allegory, really.
Yeah.
But the thing about in most modern cinema, it's a very easy scapegoat to use the religious extremist as someone who has gone over the edge and is now on some kind of killing spree or whatever. And I for one get tired of it, and I understand why some people get really fed up with it. I don't have a problem with the Ledge per se in that they had an atheist protagonist, which is somewhat rare. I will grant you that, to have someone who is an openly atheist person.
Yeah.
Right? Usually the protagonist you don't really know, right? Who knows what Indiana Jones believes? Nobody.
Well, he saw the Ark of the Covenant, so he's probably not an atheist after that.
Well, but aside from I'll grant you
that's true.
But no, we find out it's all aliens in the fourth one, so
Yeah.
So he's a Scientologist, is what it is.
Yeah.
Also, the movie Contact. In the movie Contact, Ellie was an atheist.
True.
That's true. Yeah, I like that movie too.
But that's still rare. It's not something you see every day. And so I don't have a problem with them having an atheistic protagonist. In fact, like on TV shows, the only TV shows I know of that had an atheist main character were Star Trek: The Next Generation and Battlestar Galactica.
And Bones.
Well, I've never
And
watched
House.
them, so
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there are some. I'm just saying it's nice to see different sides.
Yeah, and also Christian imagery is used quite a lot in movies, so just to pretend that it isn't, it's just wrong.
Oh no, it is.
And in Babylon 5, Garibaldi was an agnostic, so.
I think the show that dealt with religion the best of all was probably the Battlestar Galactica remake. I like the fact that they showed all sides of it. Monotheist, polytheist, atheist, and agnostics alike all throughout and this whole journey. And their ideas are often what cause these conflicts.
Yeah, what I found fascinating about the remake particularly was the fact that the monotheists were the Cylons.
I thought that was a really interesting call.
Yeah, that was a very interesting call.
That is the exact... okay, it may be interesting, but here's the thing, and this kind of is what we were saying earlier. Religion in fiction, 99.99999 bunch of 9% of the time, is evil.
Now I'm going to be the one to say,
Hold on. We can't all talk at once. We'll go serious.
Let him finish.
Okay, it's like, if you ignore characters who we don't know, like Michael said, which is most of it, because most of them just don't want to talk about it, and you when religion is threat,
Hey, Puffy, can you get closer to your mic or something? You're really quiet.
How many covenants are there? How many, how many religious people in fiction are just evil, insane lunatics? Dan Brown does this. He's famous for this. Halo does this. Warhammer 40K has one of these. In fact, the humans in Warhammer 40K are like this. It's like in almost all fiction in which religion is portrayed, it is portrayed in a negative light. Almost 100% of the time. I've actually made a video, not on my Puppy Turtle channel, on a book review channel. I made a video where I compared, and I think it was a justified comparison to the plight of women, the portrayal of women in fiction.
Puppy Turtle.
Almost always bad and negative. It's just
all right, Puppy Turtle. I think you need to read more, because I've read a lot of books that do not portray religion in the negative light. As a matter of fact, the Dune series, one of the most popular fiction series written, portrays religion in both ends. It portrays it can be used for good and also can be used for evil. Kevin J. Anderson's saga of the Seven Sons is the same way. The religion of the Ildurans is used like for both evil and good, depending on what happens to the particular person. So, and there are a whole lot of other stories we could probably look into to where the religion actually the religion actually works, for the better or for the worse.
Well, exactly, Brandon. And also, hell, look at the entire Babylon 5 series, where very often religious people are shown as very good people. Even Jakar goes from being a bad person, and it is his spirituality that actually turns him into a better person. So this idea that this is 99, this is confirmation bias on a massive scale, and quite frankly, I'm personally sick to death of hearing anyone who's part of a group that's 75 to 85% of the population going off about how they're persecuted.
Well, I want to say this too, to kind of go on what you were saying. I think that in at least Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, I think that the Cylons started off as very brutal and horrid enemies, but as the show progressed, you actually got to see their side of it, why they were doing what they were doing, and their basis in their belief and how it pushed them forward. And I think towards the end of the show, the Cylons weren't as horrid an enemy as they were at the beginning. So the fact that they were monotheistic, I don't think was portrayed in a bad light if you watch the entire series. Because
even look at the original Battlestar Galactica. Do you recall there was a twin episode where there were angels and there was the devil? I mean, come on.
Remember that. Yeah, there was a lot of religious stuff, and also in the in the new Battlestar Galactica, what happened was the Cylons at first started off thinking that it was the will of God to destroy their creators, but in the end began to stop and realize, wait a minute, especially after seeing, after some of their kind begin to understand humans personally, realize, okay, wait a minute, is this really the will of God, or is this just what we thought it was? And of course, because of the Cavill model, the one that was played by Dean Stockwell, they realized that this guy is just crazy. He's the one who's been egging us on the whole time.
Well, and he's an atheist, is the interesting thing.
Yeah, he was a preacher who was atheist. That was an interesting character for him.
Well, because when you look at, for example, current movies at the moment, I think the thing is shifting from what Poppy Turtle's talking about, where there was a certain number of time where it was a bit more negative than it is now. Because you look at people, like for example, Stephen King was the ultra person who's behind that whole thing. But again, I agree with Joe that there are that when you're 80 to 75%, you've got an ass kicking coming your way. When you're the majority, because the minority are going to speak up and say something against that. So I don't think exactly the people who are saying, "Oh, aren't we so?" I don't think that Hollywood is exactly going to go. I've never seen Hollywood say that. Oh, all religious people are like this. It's just like certain numbers are.
Well, and also I'll go one step further. I'll say this: any non-religious person or non-Christian who gets upset by Christian imagery or iconography in literature, they're dicks. Okay, so I mean, because to be honest with you, I'll tell you one thing. I just spent the last week at Origins with some friends who are most of whom are Christian and very religious. And we talk a lot about things. I actually, I'm a former Catholic. The idea of sacrifice and having characters and redemption, I think those are great images. And obviously, there's a strong link to that to Christianity. I think that's great. So, but I do get sick to death of, oh no, we're being persecuted because somebody occasionally showed us in a bad light, or we dared to show someone who wasn't a Christian showed as not evil.
Yeah.
Now, in all fairness, I have to say that Puppy Turtle does have a point in the respect that of a lot of times we do see in the media, especially like movies and TV.
Sometimes
that Christianity or just religious people in general are portrayed in a negative light quite very often, to the point where it is cause for concern. But I was just trying to make the point is that it's not always the only case.
No, and also too, I'll tell you the reason why, Brandon. Why I think what you said is true, and I think the reason why is because of the rise of fundamentalism over the last 30 years in this country, and there's a difference between religious people and fundamentalists.
Yeah, I think we've kind of earned that. I mean, if you look on YouTube, look how many fundamentalists versus, and I mean crazy fundamentalists. Don't mean necessarily the good type of fundamentalist versus.
Good type of phone.
Well, the point I would make to add to this is that yeah, there is tons of religion bashing going on in movies and TV and stuff, and definitely anti-Catholicism. You see it all the time, and
even from other Christians.
Yes, absolutely, because it is, and partly because it's an easy target. I mean, it's a really huge target to hit,
it
right?
sells. Let's just be honest. It sells.
About a priest who molested someone.
Yeah.
A movie like that practically writes itself.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I wanted to say, and this is, and even though I don't approve of the constant bashing of religion, I can certainly understand it as a person who is into film and stuff, is that conflict is what makes drama. And in order to have good conflict, you have to have something compelling going on. And to have a religious person who is either twisted or confused or whatever or warped by somebody else makes good drama. And Hollywood knows this, and so they use it. But the problem is, it's become something of a trope at this point, to where if you see, if you're going to a movie and you see someone who is praying or is at a church or something like that, that person's going to end up being a psycho in some way. And I'm just saying that it's become a point to where it's such a trope that it takes away the dramatic value of having those situations. And so I think that Hollywood should learn and do more things like Battlestar Galactica, where they take the religious ideas, turn them on their head, and really examine them in a way that we haven't considered.
Let's let Puppy Turtle go after Michael. He's been trying to get in.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Firstly, is this better? Because people have been saying I'm too quiet.
Yeah, you're good.
It's much better.
It's funny. I never thought I'd hear the day where we all thought Puppy Turtle was too quiet.
Yeah.
But seriously, folks, we'll be here all night.
Yeah.
I'll be here all the week.
I mean, it's just like I was just speaking from my own personal experience. It may well be that there's a rash of well portrayed religious people that I just haven't seen. Like, I've not read any of the works that were just listed off as good examples. I've not read or watched or done whatever is applicable to any of them. I can say of works that I've seen, all two that have portrayed religion in a really positive light, that aren't like explicitly religious stuff, like Narnia or Bible Man or stuff like that, that are Soul Surfer, which is barely not a religious movie, and No Greater Glory, which is barely not a religious movie, or For Greater Glory, I forget. I think it's For Greater Glory. It's about the Cristeros War, and they're both based on true stories. But with the exception of those two movies and things that are explicitly religious, I honestly don't know of a single positive portrayal of religion I've seen. I'm sure it's there. I just don't know about it.
The Exorcist.
Not seen it.
Kevin J. Anderson's Terra Incognita trilogy.
Never seen it.
So we're all about to name things he hasn't seen, is what this comes down to.
Well, that's a valid point to say. Well, maybe Puppy should do a little more research.
Yeah.
It's my youth. Maybe it's that more recent stuff has been more anti-religious.
No, I agree. I agree with that, and that's the thing. Growing up, and again, when I was a kid, I was religious, so I certainly wouldn't be offended by religious iconography when I was a child. But it was all over, and even to the point, I don't know how many TV shows there were where there was like a nun who, before she made her final orders and she was trying to decide and she fell in love with somebody, and she had to decide between the church and the person, and she every single time chose the church, always, without fail.
Well, and the thing is that if you look at media from the 50s, 60s, 70s, the church was always portrayed as an institution of respect.
Right.
Like all you got to do is look at The Exorcist as a film. The main characters of that film were not religious, but when when it came to the priest showing up they treated the priest with a lot of respect. Oh, here comes this big bad spiritual man who's going to kick the butt of the devil or whatever. And that the church was always portrayed simply as a positive institution. That kind of started to shift in the 80s and 90s, and now, like I said, it's become a trope to have a religious person as a psychotic nut job.
Shar, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just briefly, like yes, I recognize there's lots and lots of like religion showing in movies that quite often can go either way. Sometimes it's positive. It is quite often negative these days. I agree. What I was really talking about originally was not actually so much religion, but rather the fact that faith and belief and spirituality, those are things that are almost always portrayed positively.
I will agree with that. That in general, as a general, say, quote unquote, new agey kind of way, movies still portray faith as being a good thing.
Well,
Yeah,
I think you see that in movies too, or not movies, in shows too. Like if you take a look at DS9, perhaps the best Star Trek series ever that existed.
With the exception of the series.
All of the main characters, all of the main characters had faith in like the Federation or faith in ideals. Like when you brought up the religious dominion, and they would ask like Cisco, or they would ask one of the officers, what do you believe in? What do you have faith in? They would bring up ideals, and they would make it look like faith and ideals can be just as good. So I mean, I can agree with that.
But even there, you had the Pa wraiths,
That's true. I mean,
If I may.
You had the Bajorans, I agree.
Yeah, the Bajorans, very, very spiritual people. But I think what we're seeing in Hollywood, because, in the media, shall we say, rather than to be too specific, I think what we're seeing, because I have to say, I've got very few instances of movies portraying religion per se as a bad thing. And I think this may be because I'm not as up on the newer stuff as everybody else is. But I think if it is emerging, I think it's symptomatic of what's happening in America anyway, in this huge conflict between the religious and the non-religious. And I think what it is...
Did Brian freeze?
You there, Brian?
But yeah.
Okay, this is a good opportunity for me to.
Go, Jay, go.
Yeah, I wanted to. What I wanted to say, and I put it in the chat that I wanted to talk.
I'm sorry, Jade. I apologize.
Okay. Well, it kind of got lost in some other stuff, so I don't blame you. First of all, I wanted to say that I think that, Puppy Turtle has a point. I'm more of a reader than a movie watcher, and a lot of popular fiction, the best-selling kind of crap, has had a rather negative religious bent, mostly because everybody gets really excited about these complex conspiracy theories, things like Dan Brown. Dan Brown wrote a couple of best-selling books, so people try to copy it. However, there is also this vast field of genre fiction, which includes mystery, speculative fiction, and so on and so forth. Those fields don't follow this pattern. Those fields still have a lot of books that have positive religious or positive social, positive moral messages, or messages that make you think about one thing or another. So but in defense of Puppy Turtle, there has been a spate of really negative, popular, best-selling fiction. And I think that, as it was Sirius who said this was a trope, or Michael?
That was me, yeah.
Yeah, it was Michael. Sorry, I just realized it was Michael after I said that. Yeah, I do, and I think it's a tired one, and I think they'll be abandoning it pretty soon, because that's what happens, unfortunately. Hollywood, the book industry, everything, somebody makes a particular movie and everybody else has to copy it. Somebody writes a book, everybody else has to copy it. I think we're done with that, and I did put a list of movies in the chat from a period of time when religion was expressed positively from like the 1930s to the 1950s with things like the nun story, Going My Way, the robe, Exodus, Quo Vadis, Ben-Hur, the Ten Commandments, and so on and so forth. That period of time had a very, very positive view of religion.
Okay.
Things just changed.
And one more thing, and for Puppy Turtle, if you want to watch a TV show where religion is portrayed in a very wide range of ways, watch Defiance. It's a new show on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it has a whole lot of these alien races that all have their own individual beliefs, and they focus on like three. One that has a very rigidly structured monotheistic culture and beliefs, another one that has a very loose and tribal-based and polytheistic culture and beliefs, and one that's completely atheistic. And it's really interesting to see their individual takes on life.
Let me say one more example of one who does it. He does it at least better. Is Spore, the 2008 video game Spore. Actually, when you get to the space stage, there are two religions that exist. There's the Spotists, which are the zealot class, and they're psychos. Basically their rule is they demand money from you.
Well, do you want something? Do you want a couple of films recently that portray faith and religion?
I wasn't dumb, boss man. And the other would be the shaman class. Presumably, all of them are somewhat religious, and they get a much better portrayal. But then again, we have this thing where there's this contrast where when religion is portrayed well, it's quite a bit more likely to be a new agey or a stereotypical Native American type, not even polytheism, but animism that's going to be portrayed positively, and Western-like monotheism that's more likely to be portrayed negatively.
Bossman, you want to say something?
Yeah. I was just going to say, well, I can name you a couple of films recently made by Christopher Nolan, which tackle that sort of thing. Like, for example, if you look at Inception, a lot of people talk about like the water metaphors, that you're born again through water and that sort of stuff, and that you come back to defeat a foe that has guilt upon you and stuff like that. And also, like, as I said, The Dark Knight Rises. But not only that, like, if you look, for example, at things like A Separation, or stuff like that, there are films out there that do present it in their way. I just think that the films like The Ledge, what's it called, are just random events, because the thing about The Ledge is that it's one of those propaganda movies, which I don't think does well, because again, no one's going to watch a film that's a propaganda movie. That's the reason I hate, one of the reasons I hate The Passion so much.
Well, and I would even go so far, I mean, if you look at where I think some of the changes are going, is movies like The Avengers, right? Where you have Joss Whedon, who is an atheist. He's an out atheist, who understands faith well enough to write a character like Captain America the way he does. Where, in my opinion, one of the best religious character portrayals in recent cinema was when, the Black Widow was referring to Thor and Loki as gods, and that Captain America should stay out of the fight, and he just throws on a backpack and says, hey, there's only one God, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that. And he jumps out of the airplane. And it was a little throwaway line, but to me, that speaks volumes that Joss Whedon understands these characters. And he's not going to let his personal ideology get in the way of how he's writing the character.
Well, Joss Whedon did Firefly, didn't he?
Yes.
I loved The Preacher. I thought,
yes.
and I loved the dichotomy of how Mal started off as a man of faith, and then how he actually lost his faith and everything. So I think he can write really well.
Right. But I think I see that as where the trope is hopefully going, because like with the Avengers, you could argue that what the spiritual beliefs of various characters are. The only ones you really know is Thor is obviously a polytheist because he's one of the gods, and Cap is obviously some kind of either Christian or Jew, most likely Christian given his background. And I really appreciate the fact that they didn't make this, hey, that's what makes Captain America a good guy. It's just a natural thing. I mean, look at the era he's from, the way that he thinks. He is absolutely a 1940s Christian. And I don't see, and it's not portrayed as being a positive or a negative, just a factor in his personality.
Yeah, I do like that about Joss Whedon, a man who's able to think outside the cloister of his own beliefs.
Right.
You know, when it comes to his writing.
You know what? Another show that, and it was massively pro-religious, was Touched by an Angel.
Yeah, that was actually an interesting show. Although I like the Weird Al Yankovic version where he called it Touched by an Uncle.
Dang it. I should have brought that one up.
We already got enough stuff going against us, Michael. You have to...
Yeah, I know. Now we're going to have
yeah, seriously.
those guys saying, see, they're a bunch of pedophiles.
Jacob and Joey Dantona are already in a gay marriage, so I think it's perfectly fine if you guys get in one too.
Well,
Hey.
yeah, I wanted your blessing. That has been stopping me, Puppy Turtle. I got to be honest. So, Michael, we can now live our love that we have always been to.
Yeah.
Michael, that was me last night.
The love that would not be denied.
It was me last night, Michael. Those were my breasts. So I think that's a good segue into the last piece of this, which I was hoping was going to actually be ended, but apparently there is still more drama to be had, and I think Jade should lead us off with what we missed yesterday, Michael. Tell us, Jade.
What did we miss, Jade? I didn't know there was more crap going on.
Okay, yes, there was. For those of you who don't know, this is just a future reference. Whenever I watch one of these hangouts that goes sideways, upside down, and inside out at the same time, I keep a Word file open. Well, I do that in other hangouts as well. I did that in a hangout I just was in, which got very philosophical. I keep a Word file open, and I type notes in there frequently. So frequently for things that I don't know about that I can look up because I'm a knowledge junkie, but also when people are saying things about other people. So there was a hangout last night that was ostensibly, I guess, because they're bored, and it was the Fabulous Fundy Fun Bunch. And
The Fabulous Fundy Fun Bunch?
That's how I'm referring to them nowadays.
Make a Saturday morning cartoon promo for the Fabulous Funny.
Oh, do it, please.
Do it.
I made up the term, but it's all yours, buddy. Go for it. It's that I try to avoid some of the other nastier terms, so I refer to the Fabulous Funny Fun Bunch. Well, unfortunately, it went along the usual route. They were attacking you, Michael, because you are a Poe and a liar. And apparently, some people still have not been able to understand exactly what you were saying in your answers to the 5 questions to Ron.
Well,
I don't get that because I actually have watched that 3 times looking for what they're talking about. Couldn't find it. So you're a bad boy. They didn't go into you supporting maybe they did. I forgot that. I think they did briefly go into you supporting homosexuality. Oh, yes, they did. They did. And Gary was on valiantly trying to present a different point of view. And by the way, I think it was, I think it was Cousin Killer in the chat that referred to you as a ninja. So from now on, you're Ninja Gary to me. For your courage and bravery and fighting the enemy all by yourself. And I hate to use the word enemy, but I do feel that they are very much becoming that way. They're becoming very cult-like. And as usual, they wouldn't let Gary finish. But some things are very interesting, and let me just go to my notes here for these things. Very interesting. I'm not going to get utterly in detailed and boring, but for example. At one point, at 5706, they say that Gary is actually sending people to hell. Did you know that Gary is sending people to hell?
Well, I got to say, I did not know that Gary had that kind of power.
Yes,
Was Gary's Satan's travel agent?
Right, I think he is. I think he must be. And they tend to contradict themselves when it's convenient. One of the things they do is they, like, for instance, Gary tried to justify some of his beliefs, and excuse the term, the Lord justify, Gary. I don't mean that in the sense of you're trying to make stuff up. I mean it in a more, at least what I think of as technical sense. His beliefs by quoting a passage of the Bible. And this, I think it was David, the guy who's Scottish, came in, and he went after Gary. It's about 144:57 for those of you who want to know. For using one single passage of the Bible to justify his beliefs, which is funny because they've been doing that all throughout the Hangout, throwing one passage at Gary. And then, but David, the same guy, then at about 150:45, uses just one passage from the Bible to justify his beliefs. So it's okay for them to do it, but it's not okay for Gary to do it. Yeah. Bruce argued, and Bruce keeps attacking Gary for being elitist. Gary thinks he's better than everybody else, which, of course, we know that Gary thinks he's better than everybody else. He's kind of like that, right?
Brilliant.
And Bruce attacks him for reading just because you've read a few books, and then he argues against, because Gary tries to bring in the church fathers, says, have you guys ever done any real reading about other stuff? And Gary got attacked for using arguments and information from other people, namely the church fathers. I'm assuming that's what it's meant, because that's what was being referred to beforehand, that are apparently not using scripture. These scholars that Gary likes to read are not using scripture because apparently Gary disagrees with everybody in the Hangout, and Gary has read the scholars, so therefore the scholars must not be using scripture. I love that logic, I really, really do. But later when they get into it, they start talking about this guy, got down here, Matt Slick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Matt Slick. So they get into talking about Matt Slick, and then Bruce talks about how Matt Slick is a scholar, and because he's a scholar, they should listen to him. So Gary's scholars bad, their scholars good.
How do you judge then who is a scholar and who is not?
That is a very good question. And
I've seen a couple of Matt Slick's videos, and while the first word to come to mind is not necessarily scholar, I wouldn't say he's an idiot or anything. Well, no, I don't think he's stupid. I think, and I think it's dangerous if you think that somebody you disagree with is stupid, because a lot of times they might be smarter than you, and they just
but sometimes they're just stupid. Though.
Yeah, what's your opinion on Matt, or not Matt? What's your opinion on Bruce, Michael?
Do you really want me to give my opinion on Bruce?
Well, if you don't think people are stupid.
Okay. Well, here's the thing about Bruce. I
was joking. Don't let me sidetrack you. Keep going.
Okay. No. Since you asked, and I know I've accused Bruce of a lot of things. I, at this point, am absolutely convinced that Bruce suffers from a neurological condition such as dyslexia, dyscalculia, possibly Asperger's or autism, and. I know that sounds horrible to say that. I'm not diagnosing him, but at the same time, he shows a lot of, I have an autistic son. He shows a lot of the symptoms of Asperger's and autism. And
maybe he's just brain fried from all the drugs.
No,
listen. Yeah, I'll go after you.
What were you asking, Gary?
Well, Puppy Turtlehead wants to talk. He said,
okay.
Okay.
I was just going to kind of repeat and point and laugh at the fact that Bruce Shepard, when Bossman initially brought it up, did not know who the church fathers were. I mean, I just find that's just amusing to me.
He thought it was the title of a book.
Yeah.
I just want to know, why does anyone care what Bruce thinks or has to say? Because I find zero value in
about him.
Well, but not only that.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, let Gary respond. He's got a good point.
Okay, well, Joe. The thing is that Brad has talked to at least me, and I think Jade and a couple of others, and Brian, about the fact that someone wrote to him and said that he's her kid's favourite YouTuber, and every time he hears his voice. He comes running into the computer, to the PC room, and starts doing the wow, wow, wow with him and stuff like that. I just find that terrifying. So if I can reach that little kid, then it's all worth it. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there are fans of Bruce's who are equally in the same place, in which they take everything that Bruce says as basically from God.
And this is something that let me add on to that real quick, Gary. Is and I've said this to James in the past, is that when I argue or engage people like Bruce, like Iron Cross, any of these, what are they called again, Jade? The Fundy Fun.
The Fabulous Fundy Fun Bunch.
The fabulous. You gotta send me a PM with that so I don't forget. Fabulous Fundy Fun Bunch. Any of the Fabulous Fundy Fun Bunch. I don't engage them because I think for a minute I'm going to convince them of anything. I engage them because what I'm hoping is that some of the people that watch their videos, that follow them, might actually start to go, hey, wait a minute, maybe they're wrong about that.
So Leo's death was unjustified.
You know, and I'm hoping to, you know, I know that Iron Cross is a lost cause. I know that, you know, Bruce is a lost cause. Might not be.
But see, the thing is that I'm not. Well, two things. I think there's the people. There are going to be a couple types of people that like them. They're either lost causes themselves. The ones that aren't, well, I think they'll see it without anybody's help, and the ones that don't, because to me, the pain and anguish and just total negative hate fest of being me or Bruce in any capacity is just not worth whatever positive benefit might be gained to human existence.
And I can totally understand that viewpoint, Joe, and that's why I would say, well, then for you, I wouldn't recommend talking to them.
And actually, one other thing too, before you continue after this, is that also it seems that when I've when I've just basically ignored him or just disengaged from him, that pisses him off more than when I yelled at him. So that's actually good too.
But and one thing, and you know this about me, Joe, from the months that we've been doing this show, is one thing I do is argue.
Oh, right? Well, that's true.
And it's always easy to argue with the Fabulous Fundy Fun Bunch, because they're always saying something that is just, batshit crazy. Pardon my French. And so it makes it for, your arguments basically write themselves.
Yeah, but you know what? That after, at least for me, that got old, because I remember it's kind of like why honage videos don't have the same resonance they used to. Certainly not with me, because it's kind of reached a stage of it's like beating up retarded children. Like, yeah, I know I can win 100% of the time, and it's not satisfying.
I understand that side of it, but at the same time, I find a lot of what they say just downright dangerous. And,
well, I agree with that.
And I think that it's a public service, if nothing else, is to engage them and to try and make sure as few people as possible agree with that line.
Well, and here's the thing, too. Just one more thing, and then you can go, Bossman. The only thing that I want to say is that it's every 48 hours, at a minimum, Bruce, generally he pulls in the rest of them too, at a minimum, Bruce has to do a video in response to us. And after a while, it's just like, okay, I really just have to point out the stupidity at this juncture.
Okay, but here's the thing. This is where I disagree with Mike, is that I do think that they're reachable. And here's why. You look at look at Bruce. I mean, like, when he... Look at the way he used to be when he was like Raven Wolf and he was wearing the mask and he was proper like.
I didn't follow him back.
Like everybody was pissing him off and he'd be angry at everything. Then since he's got married, that's.
I don't know. I think he's still, and he'll talk for a little while and then he starts screeching like
better than I do.
He's the exact same. Yeah, no changes have occurred. He's the exact same.
Gary, did you see the Google Hangout where he asked me if I wanted to have sex with Jesus?
Yeah,
it came completely out. this is the thing, and Jade was there, and she knows. It came completely out of left field.
It was awful.
It wasn't that I wasn't arguing with him really per se. He started out by bringing up homosexuality and talking about how it was unnatural. And I pointed out, and correct me if I say something out of step, Jade, but I'm pretty sure that's how it went. As I pointed out to him that is a losing argument. That to try and use the unnatural argument with modern atheists is not going to get you anywhere. And to which he took that as me trying to argue for homosexuality. And then he basically went on this 5-minute scream fest, which finished with me wanting to have butt sex with Jesus. Those exact words.
Oh,
yep,
wow.
that's
special.
And the problem is that he wasn't listening to anything Michael said. He kept yelling over Michael. Now, I have one question for Michael.
Yeah.
Did you continue to mute him throughout?
I don't think so. I that's why
that was a different Google Hangout. I think it was on a Sunday night.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't remember muting him in that one, but
yeah, I don't think you did, but he thinks that you did mute him throughout that, and I didn't remember you muting him. I don't know if he was muted at all during that Hangout.
No, he's
simply. But can I say one thing about Bruce? And I also want to say one thing about the thingy last night. Bruce is a chameleon. I think he wants to be liked. He wants to find a place he fits. We were having a hangout one night. He left ours for theirs. He wasn't comfortable there. He went to Phantom Lions. He ended up leaving that and coming back to ours. I think Bruce is looking for a home. And he says stuff in private that he then contradicts when he's with them. He gets into the whole group dynamic, and he starts becoming a fundy when he really isn't that much of a fundy. And the other night, not last night, but the night before, and first person says 24 robbers, I'll hit. They went on a rant, Ron and Bruce and Ran, against Bruce Jihad for Jesus because he is agoraphobic. They turned it into a horophobic, said that he was raised in a house of prostitution, and it was 16 minutes, I timed it, and then when Bruce Jihad finally came in, they just dismissed his, his questioning them, and he was trying to control himself by basically saying, can't you take a joke? And, but no, I think Bruce has promise. And can I just say one thing about last night? Because I just want to use this as an example of how out of control things get. Ran at one point said, and he actually did say this, I even typed the transcript, and he says about 56 minutes in, he says to Gary, you already got the whole chat room on your side, and they're all atheists. And then a few seconds later says, not one Christian agrees with ya. So I thought that was funny, so I made a joke to Jacob, and I said, hey, guess what, Jacob? You and I are now atheists. I then put in another comment to Brian saying, Brian, welcome to atheism. Because everyone knows Brian and I are undisclosed and Jacob is Catholic. Well, sometime later, Ran went on a rant against me, saying that he didn't say that. He did. Gary is trying to explain to him that I was joking. He's going, she was joking, Ran. She was joking, Ran. She was joking, Ran. Ran said, no, she wasn't joking. And he said he was making a big deal about this because sometime in the future, somebody's going to watch this and they think I really said that. And the funny part about that is, of course, he really did say that. But he went on this whole rant against me, calling me the stupidest woman he'd ever met in his life, which I thought was pretty funny.
I can
but this
think
is
a few much dumber than you.
Yeah. And but the point I'm trying to make is here.
One of them's name is Sabella. But...
Yeah.
I have something important to say.
Okay, but just let me. I'm almost done. The point I'm trying to make here is this is indicative of what we see from all of them. They take something, get it wrong, and then go off on it. I mean, fine, if he wants to attack me, he can attack me all he wants. But that is an interesting rant. And by the way, I'm going to be uploading it as a separate video. So those of you who don't want to go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Just remember, atheism is a hateful cult designed to get rid of God. Please support your creator and stand up against these hate-filled heathens.
I think that's from Rand's latest video, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, let me say this about Rand. I see hope for him because he himself seems to be a bit less far gone than the others, very distinctly, at least from what I've seen.
Well, you've missed out on some of Rand too, because basically what he does is what he's done from the beginning, continues to do. What happens is he has little moments where he calms down and is actually like a very personable guy, but deep down he is a violent thug. And that's all he will ever be. You know, he right from the get-go when he first came to YouTube, he made threats of violence at Losoyo and a bunch of other people. He pretended to apologize and then continued to do it. So he wasn't really sorry. That's his nature. I don't know what happened to him in life, what turned him into that, but he is a thug, and that's all he is, of a thug.
That's pretty strong words.
Oh, Joe is not known for his subtlety, you know. But I would say that I think that Rand is a person who genuinely wants to be right. He wants to, but the thing is that if he's convinced of something, he is going to fight for it 100% with all barrels, everything he's got. And he is going to attack the crap out of anybody that disagrees with it until he's convinced otherwise, and then go the other way.
Well, Michael, that would be okay because you and I are both like that too. The difference is we're not threatening people with physical violence.
Oh no, I think he doesn't take it too far.
You know. And the thing is that he admits even the things he's supporting, he doesn't even know a lot of. So he's out there pretending to spout the Bible when he's the first to admit he doesn't know hardly anything about it.
That's where I had a problem with him, was that, and I haven't talked to him much recently, but is when he would sit there and say flat out that he doesn't know the Bible, and yet he's going to attack people in these Google Hangouts based on the Bible.
Right.
Which he just said he doesn't know.
And my favorite... Go ahead, Gary.
I was just doing my random transfer impression.
No, I thought you were...
But no, the thing with Rand is that we've got to remember that he comes from a very, shall we say, illegal background. Shall we say? We'll put it that way.
He was a career criminal. Yes, you can say it.
So he's been in prison, and as such, when you're in prison, you have to make yourself out to be a tough guy. Otherwise, you're going to get, all sorts of people picking on you. So you have to be a tough guy to try and get people to agree with him.
I think that he's a salesman and you guys are consumers, is what I think.
Who's the salesman?
Him. I think Rand Campbell is a salesman and you guys are consumers.
Trying to buy their product. What they don't do is they don't come up and say, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to slap you, or I'm going to beat you up, or I'm going to use you as a punch bag.
Well, keep in mind, Iron Cross has literally admitted on camera that he and people like him don't care what the church fathers believe. So that says a lot about them. That tells you a lot about them.
Well, I also find it massively ironic, at least when it comes to Rand, that he's always telling atheists we got to get right with God when he is constantly doing saying horrendous things to people pretty much every time I've ever seen him. So it's like, hey, dude, I've never been. I'm an atheist. I've never been to jail. I probably never will be to go to jail. I don't go around threatening people. And going after we're going to judge Losoyo and Rational Roundtable as whether or not they're good Christians. Is like, well, Rand, if you're a good Christian, I never want to be one.
I don't think that I honestly think that the fabulous fundy. Oh man, I'm kidding. Never gonna remember this.
Fabulous fundy fun bunch.
Nope, can't hear you, Michael, at all.
Sorry. I really think that these guys think that they're convincing people of becoming Christians. And I find that absolutely laughable. That they really believe that holding these Google Hangouts and stuff and just, saying the filth that comes out of their mouths is convincing people to drop atheism.
Right.
Can I say something here too? They attack Gary all the time for not doing enough. That if you're, can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure. But they attack Gary all the time for not proselytizing, not being out there and doing anything. And yet, Shar and Rictus and I have been having a Bible study with Gary and Christian, IG. And Gary explaining, we've been talking about the Bible. We've had to put it on hiatus for a couple of weeks because Rictus has been working tons of overtime. But what is that if not discussing the Bible with people who are...
But it's not doing it the way they want you to do.
Exactly.
Something that's more convenient for their beliefs is what it is.
Yeah.
Well, actually, and see, their method is all about self-aggrandizement, which is, also find hysterical.
Well, because the thing is, Joe, it's quite interesting because what you find is what I think is interesting is that I think that these people are a response to certain anti-theistic behaviours on YouTube.
I agree.
Because
they're the Christian equivalent of the Thunderfoots and the Bionic Dances and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what those hangouts are. They're basically the fundamentalist equivalent of the Magic Challenge show. They invite somebody on and then come on them until they agree. That's the reason they invite me, and that's the reason they never invite us on together. Because as soon as they know that we would. Because last night, Michael, this is something that Jay did bring up, which I'll bring up now. I tried to get Bruce to play your video that he had a problem with, your response to Minecraft. And Bruce's response was, I don't want it to get flagged. Well, no.
Flagged for playing a clip.
Well, I said that I said last night, and people could quote, and you can go back and watch this, that I would mirror it. If you flagged it, I would mirror it, and if you flagged me, I'd take you to task. Because even though you probably disagree with the way that I played it, but again, I said what you actually said, and they were like going, "Oh, he didn't say that." It's like going, "Well, play the goddamn video."
I even said in my last video to Bruce, that I didn't get a chance to give him formal permission, but that if he wants to use my video, go ahead.
It's fair use.
And I will say, Michael, that in the when you were in the hangout with them, you pointed out that you simply didn't have time. You were going to work, but you gave them implicit permission to show the video by saying you didn't have any. I don't remember the exact wording, but basically saying you didn't have a problem with the video being shown.
Right. But my problem was that they were trying to attack me for not holding a position that I fully admit. And to me, which I thought was stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
Their little tribunal or whatever that they were trying to do is, oh, well, now you have to defend. It would be like if I said, now you have to defend yourself, Jade, of the charge of being a woman. And are you guilty? And if you are guilty, then you're not really a Christian.
Well, I know half of these people don't consider me Christian anyway. So.
Well, no, you're not.
Dude, I think saying half is kind of very conservative in comparison. YouTube does not like Catholics at any point.
Well, Michael, my question is, why on earth do you even expose yourself to that concept?
That's what I'm saying. Here's the thing, and this is why I keep getting on to Gary. It's a waste of your time. Nothing ever happens. Make response videos, but going on there is an absolute waste of your time.
Okay, but here's the thing, James, is that it isn't a waste of my time.
Okay,
because I'll explain why, right? The thing is that while it might be while they might not listen now, they'll listen down the road. Because the thing is, we're Bruce,
Pipe
Isabella, and
dream,
Brad.
that's a pipe dream. I love you, Gary, but that's a pipe.
Okay, look.
Did you know that 9/11 was an inside job?
No,
I thought it was an insect job.
Oh, it was. That's true.
Oh, it was an insect job. That's very.
Okay, but, James, can I ask you a question, right? Do you not think that Christ would want us to be peace with people like that? Because here's the thing: is that I don't see those people as my enemy. What I see them as is an inconvenience.
Let me ask you this: where did Christ spend all of his time? With the Pharisees or with the sinners?
With the sinners.
There you go.
Okay, but that's what they are, though. They are sinners, though.
Hold on. Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Gary. Here's the thing. The reason why people like me, Losoyo, a Serious Mind are saying that's a waste of time to argue with these people, and Joe even goes as far to say that it's a pipe dream. I hope I got that correct.
You did.
Okay, the reason why we say that is because, like, yeah, sure, you do have an admirable goal. I understand that, but how is what you're doing going to accomplish that goal?
Well, I already explained from my perspective that my focus is not, I'm going to get Iron Cross to realize the folly of his ways. I'm hoping to convince a few of his followers.
Am I hearing you, by the way?
What?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought your intention, Mike, was to convert them to Christianity, but boy, was I wrong.
Puppy Turtle, did you have something?
Oh dear.
Puppy Turtle, did you have something you wanted to say, man?
No, I was just wondering if I could be heard because I wasn't sure. And Jacob, you're a pervert.
Oh, that's true. Well, then again, I molest boys at the altar.
Well, that is the best place.
That is the best place. If you're going to molest a boy, at the altar is the best place.
I'm Sicilian. I eat lots of children, so I sometimes rape them first.
Okay, but
Ouch.
But if we can meet someone like Bruce or someone like Ran, you don't think that's better? Because Ran admits himself that he's a young Christian. He's what, 3 years into the faith himself.
Ran is a salesman.
Yes, I know he is.
Well, 3
But that-
years is enough for anyone who is serious about their faith to actually start taking the time to actually know their faith.
If they
Yes,
know it.
no,
Like, here's the thing. I've been a Catholic for like almost 2 or 3 years now,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I know way more about Catholicism than many cradle Catholics. So I don't buy the whole excuse that he's a young Christian. He's only been doing this for 3 years. 3 years is plenty of time to get at least a decent understanding of your own faith.
I agree with Jacob, and I'll go one step further. Especially for anyone who, one, has a channel that's supposedly proselytizing, and two, speaks so vehemently about that faith, you'd think that they'd be the most rabid, learner of what it's all about.
Yeah, but not everyone knows like where to look and where to find good resources and good information.
How about start with the Bible?
Exactly.
There's a source for you.
That was the best comment ever.
Okay, but here's the thing, though, Jacob, is that if they're listening to people like Matt Slick and people like that, that's the problem there. I mean, look, the stuff about Matt Slick I know about that they don't, which I could have brought up in a Hangout, but I didn't. But like the fact he's a dishonest ass, but we'll get into that in a bit. It's the fact that they listen to that sort of stuff. But I'm bad when I quote actual biblical scholars.
Yeah.
Well, I understand that point where, okay, if all you've listened to for 3 years as a quote-unquote new Christian is sources like, say, Matt Slick or James White or worst case scenario, people like Jack Chick or people like those.
Or my channel.
Again, that's worst case scenario, but bear with me. I can understand them having a warped view of Christianity in 3 years, but at the same time, like the point I'm trying to make is like Rand is presenting himself as this person who's a quote unquote new Christian, a Christian who can be swayed by like opposing viewpoints because he's quote unquote a new Christian. Well, if he's claiming to be a new quote unquote new Christian and he's been a quote unquote new Christian for 3 years, that's still enough time to understand your own faith, even if it's just by the Bible. Even though he may not get a sophisticated understanding of his own faith in 3 years, granting the way he thinks and the way he acts, it's still enough time to understand his own Bible. I mean, even the basics of it. Like, I honestly don't buy his argument that he's a quote-unquote new Christian if he's been a new Christian for 3 years. He should already know, like, both the New Testament and the Old Testament. He should already be familiar with covenant theology. He should already understand the concept of all of these basic concepts of being a Christian. You know, I'm not even saying you have to be a Catholic. Just being a basic Christian.
But Jacob, have you not watched his new video? He says he doesn't read.
Oh, that explains a lot.
Wait a minute, who doesn't read?
Ron.
Ron Campbell.
Well, can he read or he just doesn't read?
He said in the first hangout, first part of that hangout that I was in, that he doesn't read.
Neither of those interpretations is especially surprising.
But the question is it that he can't read or he doesn't?
He chooses not to read, is what he meant to say.
Oh my God! I mean, he shouldn't even be. He shouldn't even be talking then.
He listens to the Bible. He listens to the Bible on. I'm not sure if it's on CD or he has it recorded, but anyway, he listens to an audio version of the Bible.
Well,
which doesn't have the notes and all the references and all the important stuff.
Yeah,
it's all fine and good to listen to the Bible, but I forget which apostle was it that stopped the Ethiopian eunuch and started talking to him. Was it Philip? I think.
There's a lot.
Nobody remembers that one off the cuff. But anyway, the Ethiopian eunuch told him, he asked, "Do you understand what you're reading?" The Ethiopian eunuch said, "How can I understand unless somebody tell me?" And he was reading the book of Isaiah. I mean, for the love of God.
I mean, I can understand not being an expert on the Bible. Like, hell, I don't consider myself an expert. I know there's still gaps in my knowledge regarding the Bible and regarding church theology. You know, there's always going to be gaps in our knowledge.
But just reading the Bible doesn't make you a preacher. And I think this guy's like style himself a preacher and really not. And I really wonder, what other sources is he looking into, when it comes to Scripture? Because you could read one thing in Scripture and have a horrendous misinterpretation of it and not even realize it unless you study it, unless you not just read it, but study it.
Oh, that's right, Brandon. Well, it's kind of like, okay, I'm an engineer, but it's like if I decided I wanted to be an engineer and my study was, popular mechanics or something like that.
Uh-huh.
All right, guys. So on that topic, we're going to have Agent of Doubt give us the last words, and then we'll be out. I don't think there's a hangout after show hangout unless someone puts one up. But
I will. I'd be willing to just do that. I'd be willing to do one.
Okay, so go to Puppy Turtle's channel if you want the after show.
It wouldn't be. Hold on. Let me put my channel. Okay, my channel would be my real name. So.
I don't know that I do that. But okay.
Well, you can put it in the chat here, and we'll
show up.
Unfortunately, heavy traffic just came in. He said no roaming caller today. Michael, you want to respond to that? We'll end on that.
Well, the only reason I'm not wearing my collar today is because I've been sick the last 3 days, and that shirt is not particularly comfortable on my throat when I have a cold and stuff.
So you don't have enough faith in the Lord.
Yeah, that's right. It's because, well, now that I'm sick, I know that Satan will heal me as long as I'm not wearing any of those evil symbols of Christianity.
Oh, so you're a dualist. You sometimes believe in God, you sometimes believe in Satan,
Well,
whichever is most convenient.
Technically, he would. I guess if you believe in God, you would believe in Satan too. Well, most Christians.
Well, I meant sometimes he worships God.
Follower, disciple of.
Yeah.
Polytheist, technically.
Dark Underlord.
Dark Underlord.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, you got to work on the Gaming Heretic channel while we're talking about that. All right, guys, we're going to let it go, and I guess Agent of Doubt agrees that he is a Christian and loves God.
Okay.
Well, that's why he has Prayer Town.
There we go. That is true. That is true. He's actually making a church. He is. Y'all heard it. Oh, last thing I guess I'm going to say is I had created a video that Shar had actually described as beating up on a crippled kid that I had done to Bruce. And I guess I was hoping we could all be friends, but I guess since this new revelation, Michael wanted me to bring it out, so I'll probably be making it public tonight. So everyone has that to look forward to. And everyone has a good night.
Hey, man.
Yeah,